welcome to the Non-Inkables podcast. This is episode 7. So let's do a review of the past week. So this is the week where Pixelborn ended on Sunday. It was like happy Father's Day, happy sad last day of Pixelborn. So I noticed in playing Pixelborn, there was a ton of people playing very diverse decks, I think, to like try to just test things out. And then a lot of people playing like a couple turns and then just forfeiting. I think they were just trying to see what happened. And I also was trying to get in some testing to see what deck I would play for the upcoming set championships and also the Lorcana challenge in Fort Worth, Texas. So I was testing basically between Ruby Sapphire and Ruby Amethyst. So I think personally I love Ruby cards. I like the removal. I love Be Prepared. I almost always have 4 Be Prepareds, even when other people are running 3, because I feel like whenever I play, if I don't have 4, I just don't see Be Prepared at all. And sometimes even when I have 4, I don't see Be Prepared at all. And which is wild. We also, Brian and I, because Pixelborn is going down, we basically sleeved up the top 4 decks from the Chicago challenge. So we made the Emerald Steel deck, we made an Emerald Amethyst deck, we made a Ruby Amethyst deck, a Ruby Sapphire deck, and then also the Sapphire Steel deck. That way we can practice against each other and practice with different types of decks so we kind of know what their play lines are. In terms of competitions, last week we went to a competition on Thursday at Victory Point Cafe. It was Swiss best out of 3 rounds, and I got 2 round wins and 1 round loss at the event. So the first round I played a green steel Bucky discard deck. I was playing a Ruby Amethyst deck, and I had been tinkering a lot with my Ruby Amethyst deck with different characters. Like I took out Rabbit and put in Dolores to make it a little bit more aggressive. I had my Jim Hawkins and my Yzma Fun tech cards, and then I was trying out a bunch of different things. And I think the one I took, and like I was changing it so much on Pixelborn, but I wasn't changing the actual sleeve deck. So I think the sleeve deck I played was actually pretty tame with this normal like snakes, fox, bounce package, etc. So that first round I lost, and I think one of the games was actually pretty close. The second round I played a Ruby Sapphire deck, and the first game I got my perfect 1 through 5 drops. So I did 1 drop Chernobog Followers, 2 drop Flynn, 3 drop Sisu, Emboldened Warrior, 4 drop Queen's Castle, 5 drop Jim Hawkins Queen Castle. So 1 in 5 turns essentially. And then my second game, it was not as perfect, but still I was able to aggressively quest and win. In my third game, I also won 2-0, and in that one, I think the person had just started playing Sapphire Steel and hadn't really practiced it very much. And the first game I got very lucky, so I believe they put an aerial on the board, and then I top decked it. I think they had I think a Tomato on the board, and I Be Prepared it, and then they put an aerial on the board, and then I top decked to Be Prepared, which is why I have 4 Be Prepareds in my deck, and was able to get rid of that aerial and then win. And then I did mention to the person, I was like, I think when you play, from my experience, when you play Sapphire decks, you want to get your lucky dime out first before the big high ticket item characters like Ariel or Tamatoa, because that way your lucky dime is out. The minute you play Tamatoa, you immediately get like your lore for all the items versus him having to survive, and then you can potentially get more lore. Like if you put the Tamatoa out first, if he survives to the next turn, yeah, you can lucky dime, get that lore, and then he can also quest. But if he gets banished before you are able to get that lucky dime out, you just played a Tamatoa and got no benefit. Just kind of wasted that turn. And so I mentioned that to my opponent, but they still played their character first. And so I got rid of it because I was playing Ruby. Then the next day we went to a tournament at NorCal TCG, and I lost every single round. We played 3 rounds, best of 3, but I lost 0-2 every single round. So the first round, I played one of our friends, Tyler, who is actually gonna join our team in terms of, like, testing and all that stuff, which I'm very excited for because he's very, very good. And so he was playing Sapphire Steel, I was playing Ruby Amethyst, and both games were pretty control-y and, like, pretty close. And then the first game, he played Lucky Dime and that won in, like, a turn. I mean, he was, like, pretty close. We were, like, neck and neck, and then he got a Lucky Dime out, and so he won. The second game, he only had 2 lore, and I think I was at, like, 17, and he was like, "Oh, you probably won. Let's move on to the next game." And I was like, "No, no, you should play it out because I feel like you should always play it out. Unless you're in, like, a very intense time situation and you know you're for sure not gonna win, then definitely and you wanna, like, make sure you finish the rounds, then definitely you can scoop or, like, just concede." But I think in this case, it was, like, super not serious, and, like, he was even, like, helping me while we were playing. Like, I, like, banished one of my Turnipbuck followers to draw a card, and he was like, "Are you sure you wanna banish it? Like, I'm ramping, so I'm not gonna have anything to do. Maybe you should just leave it out." And I was like, "Oh, okay, let me try that." And so literally he was, like, coaching me how to play my deck while we were playing against each other. So I was like so when he was like, "Oh, I think you have it. Like, I'm gonna skip." I was like, "No, no, no. Maybe you can figure it out." And then he, like, played a Grammatala, which let him draw, I think, like, a Lucky Dime or a Tomato or something. Anyways, he was able to get 18 lore in 1 turn and, like, had just enough ink to, like, make it all work. And I was like, "Dang it." But I feel like well, I mean, he's gonna be on our team now, and so I feel like, 1, I want his coaching on how to play better, and I feel like when I play him, I play much slower, and I actually, like, think about the next steps and the next steps after that and, like, consider, like, what he could play against me and what I can do. You know, like, I think actually more deeply about the game when I play him versus with other people, I kinda go on autopilot. I'm like, "Oh, I play this turn 1, turn 2," and I'm just, like, trying to use all my ink. And so I feel like his influence makes me a better player, and then I think my influence to him is, like, don't just scoop. You are very smart and very good at this game, and you could probably find an out that other people can't and win. AKA what happened in our game. And so, yeah, he's gonna be part of our little test group. Very excited about that. The next round, I played another Sapphire Steel deck, and it was someone who I guess hasn't played since set 1 or set 2, but is like a very good TCG kind of player. And he won both games. Both of them were very, very close. Like, we had, like, 16, 17 lore, both of us, you know? And so but it was funny because he was like, "What is this card? I've never seen this card." So he didn't know what a lot of the cards did, but yet still, like, I feel like he has because he's played other TCGs, he has, like, those basics there about the mechanisms and stuff, and I think that's just very helpful. And then my last match, I played against Amethyst Steel, and I lost, and honestly, I don't remember much of that round. And then afterwards, we were just kind of all hanging out and talking. And then the person I played in the first round was like, "Hey," because we had told him like before, like, "Hey, if you ever need any cards, like, let us know because we have a ton of cards." And he was like, "Hey, can I join your guys' team?" So we can like practice together. And we're like, "Yeah, great." And then later he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I should have, like, maybe that was too forward." And we're like, "No, no, we were trying to plot on how to get you on our team." So this is very mutual. I'm so very excited about that. And then what else? Okay, let's see. So I played a ton of Pixelborn, and some interesting things I saw were like people playing like a yellow green deck, and they were playing like the Muses and Under the Sea. And then I would see combos where they would play like We Don't Talk About Bruno to bounce that a character back, and then they would use the Muses to bounce like your little character back. So We Don't Talk About Bruno for the big character, and then the Muses for the little character. And I also played against a deck, Amber Steel, that had Flutes and Pride lands. I played some Ruby Amethyst decks that were very, very aggressive. And I was practicing on Ruby Sapphire, and I think instead of just ramping and then be preparing, either I didn't hit the be prepared or I was like, "Oh, maybe I could brawl something." And I don't think that is the right play. I also played a green steel deck that used Pick a Fight. to damage one of my characters, like a Tamatoa, with their 2-drop Ursula, so do 1 damage, and then they did Dinner Bell to banish the Tamatoa, which I think that's a lot of cards. That's 3 cards you need to make that combo work, but or at least 2 of the cards to make that combo work. But it was cool. It removed my Tamatoa. I mean, it wasn't enough. I still won, but I think that is an interesting combo. I did Be Prepared Save Me in numerous games. And there was one game I played against Ruby Amethyst that was super close, that I almost won if I could just get a goat, but I didn't, and then they had 2 lucky times. I also played I think it was a Sapphire Steel deck that just dropped a McDuck Mansion on turn 4, and I was like, what is this? This is very interesting. I was like, what? I haven't seen that card in ages. And then I also played against a Ruby Sapphire deck that I think used Be King Undisputed very well and really kind of made me want to relook at that card because I hadn't been playing it, because I feel like I was only thinking about playing it in terms of Emerald Steel when they usually have a pretty wide board and it's kind of useless because they always take out like their 2-drop Ursula, which is not what I'm going for. But it made me reconsider it. And then I've practiced with a deck that has that in it, and I think I like it. It worked a little bit better than it had when I first tested it. And then I played a Amber Emerald deck that was very aggressive, and I lost on turn 5. Yeah, and so that's kind of the summary of what's happened this past week. I did release a video going over all the cards that they announced in the Lorecast, and also kind of going into the trailer in depth. And then if you guys haven't listened to Podcana, they had a very good episode this past week. It was 2 hours long, so kind of long. But they interviewed Frank, who is like a statistician person. He does math behind like why 60 cards is ideal, and then like stats based on and he also has some articles on TCG Player with like calculators in them. So it'll be like, oh, if you have this many 1-drops in your deck, what is the probability of you getting a 1-drop in your initial hand if you mulligan aggressively, like you mulligan everything that's not a 1-drop, or if you mulligan a little more conservatively, and like if you increase the number of 1-drops, how does that change how often you'll see it? And then he also does like math about how many uninkable cards you should have. And so it's a very interesting listen, and I'm probably going to listen to it again just to make sure I got all the information out of it. And then one kind of like pearl, I suppose, from that podcast was he said, when you are behind, play to your outs, and when you're ahead, play to your opponent's outs. So essentially, when you are behind, you want to figure out how you can get yourself out of the situation that you're in, I believe. And when you are ahead, then you want to kind of play more defensively and try to prevent your opponent from kind of going around what you can do, if that makes sense. We also, Brian and I both decided that we're going to try to bling out our decks. So try to get foils of all the cards. I buy a lot of cards, so we are trying to kind of get it organically, but also the cards where the foils are pretty cheap, we will probably just buy them just for fun. And it was funny because Brian thought he was going to play Amber Steel. And so he bought a bunch of foils for that. And then he changed his mind. He's going back to Green Steel. So now we have all these Amethyst cards that are blinged out. But maybe I can use some of them if I end up playing Ruby Amethyst. I'm still kind of undecided between Ruby Amethyst and Ruby Sapphire. I feel like I'm very comfortable playing Ruby Amethyst, but I think Ruby Sapphire may be better this set. And I like the strategy that goes into Ruby Sapphire. So I like having a lot of ink and then it's like a puzzle deciding what you want to do first, how you want to ink, how you want to fishbone quill ink, and like how to use all of your ink efficiently. And I feel like you can do some very cool, crazy combos within Ruby Sapphire that are super fun. So in this next, I totally forgot. So the other thing that happened this past week is Earlmeister, who is also a content creator, published a video like of gameplay on Pixelborn, and I was the last game that he played there, and it was a mirror match, Ruby Amethyst versus Ruby Amethyst, and I lost. He had Spellbook, which I think is pretty good in the mirror, and I saw that video and I was mortified initially, just so embarrassed because I play Pixelborn sometimes at work, if it's slow, sometimes when I'm playing at home, I'm like doing 5 million other things. So I'm not like super focused all the time. And sometimes I do stupid plays, and sometimes I have to like quit the game early because something came up. And so I was like, oh, I hope it's not one of those games. And it took me like, oh, maybe like an hour before I was like, okay, I feel like the embarrassment has subsided enough that I can actually now watch the video. And I watched the video, it was fine. I think I was still tinkering around with my deck and it had some weird stuff in it. And, just in that experimenting, learning how to play the deck phase. But I don't think I did anything too horrible. I do have to watch it probably again in more detail. I was just watching it to make sure there was like no glaring horrible things. And I did look back in my notes for that match, and all I had written was spellbook in all caps. So pretty funny. But I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. Because Brian had sent me that video and he was like, oh, I think you should watch this video so you can learn how to play Ruby Amethyst against like these different decks. And then I was watching it and I was like, oh no, he played me. Yeah. So, oh, that's also how I feel like if I were to, how they like stream some matches. I was like, oh, that would like increase my anxiety so much if I knew like my match was being streamed. Whether or not that would make me play better or worse, I'm not sure. But it would be like tachycardia, immediate, just thumping in the heart. So yeah, can't believe I almost forgot to mention that. And so this past week, because Pixelborn is no longer with us, RIP Pixelborn, Brian and I have been playing a lot more in person against each other. And we've been playing what's called open face. So it's when you play and you can both see each other's cards. And so you discuss everything. So we deal out the 7 cards and then we take turns and go, I would mulligan these things. This is what I'm looking for. And then the other person goes, okay, I think I'm going to mulligan these things. These are the kind of cards I'm looking for. And then we talk like, how would this change if you were going first versus going second? Would you change what you mulligan? Blah, blah, blah. And then each turn, it's like, okay, I think I would ink this because, like, say, I'll ink Maui because this is my first ink and I can't play him for a while. And so I would ink him and then I would play this card. And then each decision point you talk through, like, I think I would quest here because this is what I think you can do to me. Like, worst case scenario, this is what will happen. Or best case scenario, this, like, I'm playing into the probability that you probably don't have this, So you're talking about every single step in super, super detail. So the games take a really long time. However, it's so helpful to kind of learn how your deck works, what answers you would search for, and then how to play other decks. And so we did that. I think we did like 3 games of that, and we plan to do way more, but it's very, very helpful. And then because we play differently. So Brian watches a lot of videos on other people playing, and he also has some experience in the past. Whereas I sometimes watch videos, like I really want to watch. So Brian watches a lot of Dan Syed's videos, and I think those videos are so good. However, I hear his voice and immediately I'm just sleepy. And so when I watch his videos, I actually watch them on like 2 times speed because I think with like my ADHD, otherwise I space out and I go do something else. I'm not paying attention at all. But sometimes I think of ways to play stuff because I've seen it on Pixelborn or something that he didn't think of. I was like, well, if you do this, like I can do this to you. Or if you do this, like what if you do this? So it's very good. And I think having more people do that with you would just help improve your game. And so we've been doing that. And then we were going to play Illuminator's Quest at some point because we had lost so bad the first time. And then after watching the Lorecast where they play Illuminator's Quest and also lost really badly, even though they had like made decks, made me feel a lot better. But I think we are now focused more on competition. And so we're trying to get better. And I feel like for me, I am so motivated by, I just want to beat the boys. And so I can have my Legally Blonde moment and where I go, like, it's hard because I feel like there's so many boys that play, they're so intense. And I just want to be like a cute girl who plays and beats the boys. And so I'm trying to put in work for that. For the channel, at least in this upcoming week, I think the video I will probably be releasing will be about Emperor's New Groove. I was going to make it last week and just kind of ran out of time. Work got really insane. But hopefully this week will be a little bit better. And then this week, we are planning on at least playing probably Friday night. There's a local game store that we haven't been to. I don't think they're very Lorcana heavy, and their Lorcana merchandise is not priced below MSRP, so we've never gone there to buy cards. But they're holding a tournament Friday, so we will probably go there. And then kind of still undecided if we're going to go to our usual Thursday spot or not. And then Sunday, our usual local game store, Phantomich. I feel like I got corrected on which way to say it, and now I'm very unsure which way to say it. But they're having a constructed tournament, which we hopefully will go to, and has our usual crew of fun people. And so, yeah, those are the plans. It's going to be a lot more playing in person and testing. I think eventually we may buy a rig, figure out how to webcam essentially the in life games for the channel, but that may take some time because I always feel like there's like a weird glare and you can't see the cards very well, even on like the Disney challenge. I feel like it's sometimes hard to see. So, yeah. And then the background video for today is me sparkling out my Rapunzel mat. So I got this idea from basically because the challenge is having those holographic mats. And I was like, what if I make my own? And took a lot of testing of different types of pens. I tried like a gold Sharpie and it just like seeped into the mat and then also made it like much darker than the color was. And then I tried a different like Japanese pen, and then I tried some fabric pens, and they all like would just seep in. You can see the glitter. So I ended up using Stardust Jelly Rolls, and it looks great. And then now I just have to figure out what kind of fixing spray I can put on it. All the ones that are for craft seem to be matte, and I just want a transparent fixing spray. So I'm wondering, I'm gonna try testing just using like a makeup setting spray, or I also thought about hairspray, but that might be too sticky, just to kind of create a protective film on the. So I want to create a protective film so that the cards don't get very glittery, but I also want it to be bendable. I don't want it to like be hard and then I can't roll the mat. And so, yeah, that is the video in the background. Let me know if you have any topics you want me to talk about, and keep shuffling. And hopefully, you don't end up with a whole handful of non inkables like me. All right, bye.